Hi, I'm Yegi. I'm an entrepreneur and success coach who wants it all. Family, luxury, career, and the freedom to do whatever I want, whenever I want. And I'll do whatever it takes to get there. I created the Yegi Project to document my journey and inspire others to do the same. My mission is to change the world by influencing and leading others to do what they love and live fulfilled lives.
Hello. Welcome back to the Yegi Project. Today's honored guest is Christian Brindle, who is the CEO of Everything Senior Insurance. He is a master in insurance and an entrepreneur who could share his story and inspire all our listeners to get to what they love to do. Without further ado, let's give Christian a warm welcome. And Christian, please let us know, who are you and what do you do?
Yes. First off, thank you for having me, Yegi. I'm super excited to be here today. It's an honor. My name is Christian Brindle. As Yegi said, I run a company called Everything Senior Insurance. We are an insurance agency that helps both consumers, but we also mentor and train other insurance agents and kind of help them replicate our success that we've had in growing our company all around the country. And we support insurance agents and really entrepreneurs that want to use the vehicle of insurance to kind of build their businesses. And so that's a little bit about what we do. We've been in business. This is year 11 for us. And I'm excited about the conversation.
Nice. I'm excited to get to know you and how you got into the insurance industry. Please take us back, maybe all the way back from high school, or you figuring out what you want to do. What was your journey like to end up here today?
Yeah, it's always interesting to kind of look back and see how things kind of domino, right? But for me, I was not a very good student in high school. I was probably, my school didn't really do this. I think it's kind of a mean thing when schools do this, but if there was a least likely to succeed in my class, it probably would have been me.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that, I think. So a lot of creative or outside of the box thinkers end up being not so great in school.
Yeah, absolutely. I just had no interest in school. I didn't take it seriously. I didn't like it. I didn't study for my classes or anything like that. So I graduated high school, but just barely. And I felt like for a point in time from when I graduated high school, I went to community college. I did a semester, dropped out after about a semester. I wasn't even going to my classes. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I think like a lot of young people, they, kind of float through life and kind of try to figure out what their life is going to be about and what things are going to look like for them going forward. And so, I got in insurance actually because my father was an insurance agent for about 25 years before I got in. So when I was 21 or so, I'd worked various jobs and just kind of floated around trying different things. I got my insurance license, and at first I was working with my dad and kind of learning from him. My dad had built a pretty successful agency, but not hugely successful, right? He had a brick and mortar office. He had, a part-time assistant, and he had hung around for 25 years or so, and had done well, but he kind of reached a point in his business. I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs do this, where they reach a point of success. Maybe they're making a couple $100,000 a year and they just kind of stop growing and they stop progressing. And so I came in, kind of learned from him, and I ended up creating my own firm, my own company, and within about 6 years or so, my company was bigger than his because I had a tremendous work ethic. And once I really understood what the potential, I guess, of the vehicle was of insurance, I started taking it very seriously. I was a workhorse. I put my head down, and actually looking back to about 3 years ago, my company actually bought his company so he could retire. And so, yeah, it's been kind of a crazy journey, but that's how I got in, is because my dad was in.
That's great. So for our listeners and for myself who don't know too much about the insurance on the business side, and you said it is super scalable and the opportunity is huge. Can you kind of educate us and you said you got your license in insurance. I didn't even know you have to be licensed to even sell insurance. I thought, I don't even know what I thought. I didn't even think about it, actually. So educate us a little bit. How does the insurance business work for an agent or a firm like yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, to sell insurance, you have to be able to get licensed with your particular state. And the process to doing that is pretty similar, I would say, to like getting a real estate license for someone trying to be a real estate agent. You take a test, it's heavily proctored, oftentimes in an in-person location where they have cameras on you, they're making sure you're not cheating, that kind of thing. You
But
have to
it's
get a
state regulated. The state gives you the license. You don't just learn from someone. Like you can learn in different facilities, but you have to take the state test in order to officially be licensed.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So, there's a lot of different services these days that somebody can, go to classes. They can even do online classes to kind of, do the study guide portion of it to kind of prepare you for your state exam. But yeah, it's a situation where you typically, for most people and most states, you'll go into a specific place, you'll schedule it. They'll put you through metal detectors, the whole 9 yards kind of deal. And then, of course, in addition to being able to pass the exam, you also have to, go through a pretty rigorous background check. So you have to have a clean background. They fingerprint you in most states, and
That's good.
yeah,
Honestly, I didn't know it's such a process. It's good that, it goes through all of that background check and everything to make sure that, the insurance agents could be trusted.
yeah, absolutely. Insurance is an interesting thing because it's something that pretty much all of us have to deal with in our everyday lives in some form or fashion from time to time. But the average person has, not a huge understanding about insurance. It's not exactly a sexy thing to study up on in, your free time. Most people want to watch Netflix instead, right? So, but insurance, the reason why they really are relatively picky about who is able to get a license and who isn't is mainly due to the fact that insurance agents are technically considered fiduciaries. They
Mm.
handle at times, they might handle money for people, or they'll be responsible for transacting business and allowing the insurance company to basically be a filter, I guess, for the insurance company for that potential client, and seeing if they really qualify for a certain product. They act as almost an underwriter of sorts in the field. And so, it's very important that somebody that doesn't have a shady background is given those types of privileges and responsibilities,
Of
because
course.
it could get really ugly if the wrong person was given that access.
Got it. As far as different, because there's a lot of different types of insurance, and
Yes.
companies that, you guys work with as agents. Can you tell us a little bit about the different types of insurance you work with, or just is there general categories?
Yes, yeah, great question. So for us particularly, very heavily focus on the health insurance markets. Primarily, we do a lot with Medicare. Medicare meaning, in health insurance, state and federal government sponsored, provided health insurance for seniors, people that are 65 or older for the most part. We do under 65 health insurance as well, like on the marketplace and the exchange and, Affordable Care Act plans. Our bread and butter, I would say, is Medicare. We also do life insurance and things like that, but Medicare is our primary focus. And so with Medicare and health insurance, I feel like it's such an interesting market because it's something that people, especially Medicare beneficiaries, for the most part, older people, it is not just a luxury, it is a full-on need for a lot of people. It's something that they
Yeah.
use in their everyday lives. And if it's not set up correctly, it could affect their lives negatively in a huge way. They might not be able to get a prescription filled. Maybe they can't see the right doctors that they want to see, or maybe they can't get a procedure done that they really need done. So it has huge everyday impact. Not to say that other types of insurance don't, because they certainly do. Like other types of insurance that are out there would be like property and casualty, right? Which would be like your car insurance or your homeowner's insurance or something like that. There's like traveler's insurance, which is kind of more luxury, right? For cruises and going out of the country and things like that.
Yeah, so even with insurance for our listeners, if somebody's interested in being an agent, they still could specialize in an area that they really love.
Yes, absolutely. Like, I think like most things, right? Like that old saying is, the riches are in the niches. And I think there's a lot of truth in that, especially with insurance. I mean, there's a lot of companies like mine out there that they will kind of consider themselves a jack of all trades of sorts, to where they will have their fingers in all kinds of things. But what I typically find is insurance is rather complicated for the average person. And for agents, it's really no different. If they're trying to do all these different things, they end up really not being extremely proficient at any one type of insurance. And it almost ends up being a hindrance more than anything. I
And
think a
also,
lot
does
of
it change? Are there a lot of updates, and does it change pretty frequently?
Yeah, it does. There's a lot of updates, in Medicare and health insurance in particular, you have what's known as open enrollment periods. And those are the time periods where insurance companies are usually making changes to their plans. Price could go up, premium could go down, benefits could get stronger, they could get weaker, networks can change. And that's the time of year where not only are those changes put out to the public, but it's the time period where someone, if they don't like the changes, they can make changes to their plan. Most insurance plans, they'll kind of lock you in for the rest of the calendar year unless you have a special reason to change.
I see. Yeah, and I can see why having like a niche could be a benefit as for an agent because you could really stay on top of everything in your market. But since this is an entrepreneurial podcast and a lot of
Yes.
our listeners are interested, did I read right or did I learn right? You also train or you also kind of mentor other agents within your company. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do with that?
Yes, absolutely. So a big part of what we do as a company is we work with a slew of different agents around the country where we mentor them and provide them training to essentially allow them to have a blueprint to grow their own practice or grow their own agency in an efficient manner, right? To kind of duplicate some of the success that we've had. Right now, we have about 600 agents across the country that we partner with to where,
Wow.
we provide them with training, with resources, with support, and we act as essentially like their partner in their business in a sense. And when they do make sales, our organization makes a small override from the insurance companies in addition to their own commission. So, their success is our success. And so, that's become a very growing and thriving part of our organization, and it's something that's growing. We anticipate that probably in the next 12 months, we can grow that number to about 1,000 agents across the country.
Wow, and that I could see that being even a lot just to manage, even being in communication with as a, small business owner myself. And if you don't mind sharing about how big is your team or how are you able to scale and stay on top of growing a business? Because like you said, if you can either be an agent or an entrepreneur, kind of like your dad, you hit your number, you're happy, you're comfortable, and you just kind of stay there. But it sounds like you decided to find ways to scale and grow and build your team. Can you talk a little bit about that process and what were the challenges that came with that and what made you want to keep growing?
Yeah, absolutely. So to answer your first question about kind of like our size internally, our setup is a little bit complicated, but I'll try to simplify it as best as I can.
Yeah, I think it's interesting for entrepreneurs to kind of see different options of setup in different lines of business.
Yeah, so as a whole, as of today, we are made up of 5 different companies. So we are one company, but 5 sub-companies within the same company, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
we have the insurance agency. We also own a leads and marketing company that generates leads for insurance agents. We sell them to agents across the country. We own a virtual staffing company that finds virtual assistants for specifically insurance agents. Everything's tied to insurance. We own an event company for a yearly conference we put on for agents where they can buy tickets and travel out and hear from the best and brightest minds the industry has to offer for a few days. Yes. And then we have a training and consulting company where, agencies can pay us for consulting and training, and we put out courses specifically for insurance agents that they can purchase. As an entire organization, all 5 companies really being under one umbrella, we have about 300 employees today. We have a lot of employees, probably 75% of those employees or so are overseas in the Philippines. So we hire a ton of people in the Philippines abroad. We have a virtual call center in the Philippines that is a part of our leads and marketing company. And then the rest of our employees work in the United States. Most of them work here in our office in Utah, so that's where we're located. But we have a handful that work remotely in other in other states across the country as
Yeah,
well.
that's very impressive actually to set that up and try to work with even overseas. It's a lot of work to get there. So congratulations on that. And it's very nice to hear that you found a way to go full circle and have different aspects while still focusing on insurance. But that's actually a good note and something I want to point out to our audience. Is in whatever industry they're in and they're working and they're kind of stuck, okay, I hit my limit. I can help X amount of people. My calendar is booked as being an agent. Hey, this is an option. You can look at different avenues that relate to your business. That could be like a subsection, kind of like how you did. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of answer some of the other questions that you had there, how did we kind of get to this point? Well, it's been a journey, right? So the company's been in business. This is year 11. The funny part about it is two of our businesses, the virtual assistant company and the leads and marketing company, heavily rely on Filipino staffing and overseas staffing. Those companies actually were not founded by me. We actually merged with another company about a year and a half ago. And so, I have a business partner. He lives in Oregon, and he is actually the mastermind behind most of what we do in the Philippines. I've learned a lot to kind of help him manage it along the way as we've gone since the merger. But, our company...
two brains are definitely better than one. And I think as entrepreneurs, it's kind of hard to let go or share the ownership of a business or even to merge, especially when you start off as a small business. You just have to really switch and change your way of thinking and mentality in order to get to that next level. We do need people. We do need other, like you said, masterminds to grow and scale at a certain level. And I think for me, that's been the biggest challenge, because everybody says, oh, it's so hard to do business with partners because sometimes you don't see eye to eye. There's conflict. You have to share the profits, all the negative things. But the reality of it, if you have the right partner and the right setup, it's pretty much the only way to scale to a much bigger level.
I call it a power move, right? It's almost like you can leapfrog your progress, sometimes multiple years worth of progress in one swift move, right? But that being said, getting into a partnership or merging with another company or taking on a partner is very much like getting married, right? Like getting married in theory is good if you marry the right person, right? But so many people marry the wrong person, and such is true with partnership in business. And so, it is imperative that if somebody is going to go into a partnership, in my opinion, that it's somebody that, first off, you see eye to eye with, you share a lot of the same foundational core beliefs and how to run the business. You complement each other, right? They're strong in areas you're weak. That usually is a great balance in a partnership. And it's somebody you can get along with too, right? It's somebody that you're going to spend a lot of time communicating with, talking to, working with. And so, it's kind of like, I hear from agents all the time, since our merger and our partnership took place, it was, should I take on a partner? Do I need to try to merge with another company? And it's the same kind of question of asking, like, should I get married? Well, it's like, do you have someone you want to marry? Like, I don't think you should just get married to get married. Yeah.
Honestly, I love that analogy because it is very, very true. Everything you said really can apply to a marriage or a partnership, because you are spending the same amount, and your company's your baby, it's your kids, and it's growing, and you have to have similar visions and values in order to raise that business, which is your work family.
Yes.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, how about the challenges? Because there is a challenge, obviously, in anything, just like having a partner or merging. What were some of the fears that you had in the beginning? Because things are going great now with your partner, which is amazing. So you have a flow. But before you even knew how that was going to be like, what was your decision-making process of, okay, this is the right move for me? Or did you have any fears? What were the questions you asked yourself and reassurance you needed in order to actually go forward with the merger?
Yeah, absolutely. And such a great question. Very important. So the kind of history with it was, him and I had been doing business together for many years. So I think what helped the situation was that we knew each other rather well and knew
You had
each
a
other
good
for years.
relationship to start off with.
Yeah, we had a friendship, but we also did a lot of collaboration. Me being an insurance agency owner and him being a lead company and a marketing company, at first I was a client of their services. I was someone that bought a lot of leads from them and a lot of marketing services from them to kind of work into the mix and the balance of our marketing we did internally. And so, and we did a lot of content creation together. We did a podcast together for a little while. Like we did a lot of projects together. And so we kind of had an idea going in what it was like to work with each other, but not to the same degree of a merger, right? That's a totally different animal. It's
Of
like
course.
every decision is then impacting the other person at that point. It's not as simple as just projects, but that familiarity was helpful going in. Now, he approached me about doing it probably a year before we actually did it. And my first reaction was I didn't want to do it. I was like, I don't really want to do that. Because I was so used to being a lone wolf. I didn't like having to, run decisions by another person. I liked
Yeah.
making my decisions myself. But one thing I learned with that, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs feel that way too, there are some decisions that it is good to shoot from the hip and go with your gut and with your instinct. There's other decisions where it's good to have some counsel, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes, talking through a decision actually helps you come to a better decision.
Yeah.
With someone else that you equally respect, that has a very savvy business mind. And so, about a year after we first had that conversation, it was brought up again. Over the course of months at that point, we went through negotiations, having conversations, talking about it a lot and talking through every little detail, like what would this look like? What would that look like? How would we do this? How would we do that? I currently do this. How do you do this? I wouldn't want to change this. And,
Really getting down to the details, like a formal document. Okay, who's responsible for what? Who has the
Yeah.
last say, and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so towards the end of it, we, got attorneys involved to help us really put everything that we wanted the arrangement to look like into one agreement, get all the details in place. I think a lot of times when people do business agreements, they do it off of, a verbal agreement or a handshake. That's super messy.
Yeah,
You don't
and
think you
it's
ever want
not
to do
as
that.
detailed and thought through with a unbiased person like an attorney. So I think that's a
Mhm.
great kind of a pointer or a great best practice for our listeners to make sure to take their time to do that back and forth and have an outside perspective to make sure that there is no blind areas before you do merge, no matter what size your business is. I think it's so important. If you talk about all of that from the beginning, then there's no hard feelings, right? And
Yeah.
I love that you compared it to a marriage, because it's literally the same thing in a relationship and a marriage. Like my husband and I now, from the first moment we dated, I was like, okay, I'm laying it down straight. This is what I expect. I want 4 kids. Like if you're not on the same page, I expect not to cook, but I'll clean. Once you set all those specific things in place, just like in a relationship, it's going to be way more likely for it to be successful. And I love that you guys took your time and did all of that right from the start. So then there was no room for feelings being hurt, miscommunications, misunderstandings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we both had a lot to lose going in if it didn't go well, right?
That's a good thing, right? It's a good thing, because
Yeah.
you don't want to get in bed with somebody who has nothing to lose, because they're not going to care as much and not put as much work into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. His company had been in business at that point 8 or 9 years. My company at that point had been in business 8 or 9 years. We started around the same time. And while our businesses were very different, we're in the same industry. They brought strengths to the table that we didn't have, and we brought strengths to the table that they didn't have. And it just made a lot of sense. But I think ironing out those details helped really make the transition a very smooth one. And what we saw, so it took effect January 1st of 2024. Our company was already a 7-figure company. Their company was already in a multiple 7-figure company in revenue. So it's almost like we're combining revenues, we're pooling resources, and able to really pursue the growth we're wanting on all sides of the business together as a unified kind of group. Last year we set a record year on the lead company. It had its best year ever. Our virtual assistant company grew by 300%. Our insurance agency had its best year ever in terms of, applications submitted, production.
Congratulations. That's
Yeah.
exciting to hear.
So it worked out great, right? We had growth all across the board. And so like that's why I call it a power move if you do it correctly, because could we have seen those same type of growth numbers on our own? Probably, potentially, but how long would it take? It might have taken 5 years, maybe even 10 years of the growth trajectory we were on our own, right? So it can be a leapfrog type of event for your business if you do it right.
That's great. I'm so glad you were successful with it, because it is a hard decision, but once you make it,
yeah,
it's great that it works out, that, or else it could go totally the other way. The top 3 things you said that to make sure in order to make a smart move before you merge or join with a partner is make sure you get along. You have both about the same amount to lose in business as in commitment. And what would be the last thing that you would say as your top advice of like what to look for before you join in with a partner?
Yeah, I think what your end goal for the business is, I think
Yes,
is
you said that
extremely important.
actually. Yeah, you said
Yeah.
that the values and vision and your goals.
Yeah, that's so important. Like, because if one partner wants, let's say, to just keep their business going for decades, right, and pass it off to their kids and everything like that, and another partner wants to scale for 4 to 5 years and then exit,
Yeah.
the priorities are going to be very different across those two partners. So I think like not just your goals on the short term, but like the actual end goal of the business. What is the purpose of the
Oh, that's
business long term? I think is really, really important in all things. I think it's just being on the same page. But
yeah.
yeah, that would probably be my
No,
third
I
one.
think that's excellent advice. I did actually go to business school, and I do remember the professors, like when you said it, it came back to me. Always know your exit plan, right? And I think it's really important to share that with your partner. Okay, so before we kind of wrap up the podcast, I always like to get to know my guests a little bit better and
Sure.
ask some fun questions. So if you don't mind, random question. Now that you've hit an X amount of success, what does a happy and fulfilled life look like to you?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I think the answer to this for most people, I'm sure, evolves as they go, right? Like when I first
Yeah.
started my company, the answer to that probably would have been financial success, growth, reach, influence, all of those types of things, right? Your appetite for success is humongous when you're first starting, right? Because you don't have
Sorry to
anything yet.
cut you off, but since you mentioned it, your appetite for success, what was your why? What made you want to have that hunger to succeed at your level?
Yeah, I'm always somebody that likes to prove myself to people. Me being somebody that wasn't a super successful academic student in school, everything like that, I had a lot of people that just doubted my ability to make anything of myself. And I think I always had kind of a desire to prove myself. I wanted to have a good life. I wanted to live a good life. I wanted to be able to take care of my family, everything like that. But I don't think motivations go as deep when it's just monetarily based, right? You're going to reach a point where you're like a lot of people, like we talked about earlier, how you're going to feel comfortable and you're not going to keep going. For me, I wanted to prove myself to people that had doubted me, and I wanted to prove myself, probably looking back on it, to myself. That I
Yeah.
was capable of doing what I wanted to do in life. And so that would probably be my why. But to circle back on your other question, right? So emotions change over time. Today, I would answer the question as, I want to win in every area of my life. And people talk a lot about balance. I don't think there's any such thing as balance, truthfully.
You don't think so?
I don't. I think you have to think about what you want your life to look like and what you want it to be, and then find a way to be that across the board, right? So, I want to be extremely successful in my business. I want to be well respected in my industry. I want my company to keep growing. I want my employees to do well. I want them to be happy. I want them to be fulfilled. I want our agent partners to be successful. I want all of that. But I also want to be a great husband. I also want to be a great father to my kids. And I'm not a believer that I have to choose one or the other. I think if I build my life intentionally and in a certain way, I think I can have all of that.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
And so that to me is success, right? It's finding a way to thrive in every area of your life without really compromising anything that's important to you.
I see. So that's what a happy and fulfilled life looks like to you too. Although you don't believe in balance, but to have that balance with fulfillment with your personal life and your work life, to enjoy both and give your all to both.
Let me explain what I mean by that. I'll kind of dissect it just a tad more if I can on the balance part of it, because people might hear that and be confused. When I say I don't believe in balance, I think balance is often looked at from the scope of people that in order for you to balance things, you have to take away from something to give to something else, right? You're balancing something. Think about it like a plate, and you have things on the plate, and to make room for something else, you have to move something else off, right? Or move a portion of something else off. I don't think that needs to be that way. I think
just get a second plate.
Yes, exactly. Right? Like, I don't need to balance my first plate. I can find a second plate and move my mashed potatoes or whatever it is onto my second plate, right? And then I can have it all.
Yeah.
So I try to live my life with the mentality that, if I want my life to look a certain way or I want my life to be something, there's no reason why I can't have it or my life can't look that way. I just need to find a way to be more creative and be intentional about building it into what I'm doing. But I don't want to balance things to where I can only give so much of myself to this, or I can only give myself so much of myself to that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I think just the word, like you said, is confusing, but mentality-wise, it totally makes sense. I kind of like to think of it, it's not or, mentality. I don't have to have this or this. I can have this and this. Yes. So not necessarily the word balance. I think it's just a limiting belief of, like you said, having to give up something in order to have something else. But I do 100% agree that you can have it all of what you want at that moment. You just have to be resourceful, creative, and really sit down and figure out how to have that all, what that means to you. For me, when I hear balance, I think I do want a balanced life, but I think for me is the timing. I want to be able to balance my time between all the things that I love to do. So it's more of a time thing when I think of balance, but I 100% agree with you. It doesn't have to take away from anything else. We can have it all. Yeah. So on that note, please tell us, what are your last words of encouragement, and where can our audience and listeners find you and connect with you?
Yes, well, I'll start off by saying thank you for having me on the show today. It was a pleasure. I had a great time.
Thank you so much for joining. We've learned so much from you, and I'm excited to have our audience really tune in and ask follow-up questions on our feed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my last words of encouragement would probably be, I think if you have a dream, one thing I've learned over the years is if you have a dream or you have a vision for where you want to go with your business, if you want to be an entrepreneur, first off, don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it. There's a lot of great entrepreneurs that we never hear about, business owners that we never hear about because they were talked out of it by someone that they love, right? With the best intentions, right? So, dream big, have big goals. Whatever you think you're capable of doing at the beginning, you probably are capable of much more if you just allow yourself to acknowledge that. And, I think as you go, what separates, I think, great business owners and entrepreneurs from mediocre ones or ones that flat out just aren't successful is the great ones, they continuously innovate their processes. They keep getting better. They keep learning. They're always in growth mode. Not just from a business perspective, but internally. They're learning new skills. They're learning new things. They're making themselves better. And so, for me, I think to go as far as you might want to go, those things are super, super imperative. And you need to not forget that. You don't want to get comfortable. You don't want to be the guy that gets to a certain point and you get comfortable. Because imagine what you could have grown to if you just kept going, right? You might have been on the verge of greatness in your business. Those would be my final words of encouragement. And the best place to locate us, if you're an insurance agent or you're interested in becoming an insurance agent, or maybe you just want to hear some business practical information, we have a YouTube channel, just my name, Christian Brindle, at Christian Brindle. We just passed 7,000 subscribers, so we'd love to have you follow us there. And we have a Facebook group specifically for Medicare insurance agents. If you're interested in learning more about how to become one, or you might want to become one, called Seven Figure Medicare Agent. We have just shy of 10,000 members of Medicare agents all over the country. So those would be probably the two best places to find us. You can always check us out as well on our website, eseniorinsurance.com.
Excellent. And we'll make sure to link all of that below. And Christian, thank you again for your time, and your last words of wisdom have been very inspiring. Thank you for that. And I want everybody to go back and listen to that last words of encouragement one more time, because everything he said takes a long time to learn, and it's a lot packed in those like 2 minutes that what he said. So go listen to it one more time and really think about it. I think it's a good ending to this episode. And again, thank you until next time to our audience. And Christian, my best wishes to you and your company until next time. Bye.
Thank you, Yegi.
Thank you for listening. Please rate and review this podcast. Follow and engage with us on social media under the Yegi Project. And if you're interested in being a guest, email info@theyegiproject.com. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes.